Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing some of my auto-buy authors and my favourite books by them. Now this video was inspired by a video that I recently saw Brie at In Love and Words do, and I realised I haven't done one of these in a very long time. So we're going to be talking about romance authors. They're my auto-buy authors, which means any book that they come out with, I'm pretty much going to want to pick it up. I'm going to preface this though by saying I'm purely talking about their romance fiction because some of these write other genres or across readership age groups, but I'm purely focusing on my romance auto-buy authors. If you have been a long-time subscriber, none of these are going to be shockingly new to you, but I thought it would still be nice to sort of revisit it. Probably top of my auto-buy list is Alexis Hall, who is just a phenomenal queer romance author writing queer romance books, and everything about them is an utter delight. I'm currently doing a read through of his backlist with Brie from In Love and Words. We have read quite a few books together so far and I'm enjoying the experience. I had read a few more of his books than she had when we started this project, so some of them have been rereads for me and I have not regretted a single second of coming back to these books. He has written an incredible array of books from young adult fiction to contemporary romance, historical romance, paranormal romance, and I just adore everything he writes. The way that he writes, his writing style, all of it just appeals to me, and I will buy anything he writes. So I have two favorites, and they're in two subgenres of romance. So there is A Lady for a Duke, which is a historical romance. It is probably my favorite historical romance of all time. It features a transgender heroine and it is a childhood friends to lovers story. It is just so gorgeous and beautifully done and written and explores and delves into many issues around queer people in this time period. I absolutely love and adore this book so much. I need to do a reread really soon. If I had to pick my favorite Alexis Hall book, it will always be For Real, which is part of the Spires series, which are all standalone queer romance books. This is an romance. It is an age gap story with a dominant and submissive relationship where the dom is the younger character who is just learning what it means to be a dom, and the older hero is the submissive who is teaching him. It is such a well-written book. It is so clever in the way that it flips roles that you would traditionally expect to see in a romance, particularly in an age gap romance. The whole thing is just so beautifully done. So if you haven't read Alexis Hall, these are my absolute favorites, top of the list. Then we have one of my newer favorite auto-buy authors, and that is Tal Bauer, who I only started reading at the end of last year. And I think I've read about 6 of his books now, and I'm rapidly going through his backlist. And I've enjoyed every single book that I've read. Like, nothing has been less than a 4-star read, and quite often they end up as 5-star reads. He is a queer author writing romance. He writes romantic suspense and contemporary romance, and all of it is really fantastic. I'm going to give my current top romantic suspense favorite and then my favorite contemporary romance, which most of you will probably already know because I have not shut up about them this year. Never Stay Gone by Tal Bauer is a romantic suspense story set in a small town in Texas. It features the second chance relationship between a Texas Ranger and a deputy sheriff in the small town as they investigate the murder of a group of women over a period of time. There is politics and small town drama. The second chance element comes in because they were together very briefly towards the end of high school and went their separate ways and haven't spoken since. And so they are reconnecting, and the whole thing is just absolutely wonderfully done. And in terms of Tal Bauer's contemporary romances, You and Me is amazing. I absolutely love that one. But I have fallen in love with his hockey books. So Gravity is the first one and the rest of the story is the second one. They're not really books that you have to read in any order, so you could pick either of these up, but they are set in the same universe and characters from Gravity are mentioned in the rest of the stories. So that's kind of the link between the books. But these are just amazing. So Gravity features a relationship between 2 NHL players who meet at All-Star Week and they've never met before, and they just have this instant chemistry, and they end up falling for one another when one of them ends up traded to the other's team. The rest of the story is hands down my favorite Tal Bauer story. It's just very emotional and very hard-hitting and just got me all up in my feelings. It is about Morgan, who is traded to the worst team in the NHL, and what he discovers there is a team that has been bullied and broken by their captain and by their coaching staff, and he helps to begin to piece this team back together. And there he meets Shay, who is one of the most experienced rookies on the team, and the two of them just fall head over heels in love with one another. The beautiful thing about these books, no third act breakups in them, conflicts are always external to the relationship. These also have a huge amount of hockey in them, which is what I love in a hockey romance, because even though I'm not a sports person and I don't know the first thing about hockey, if I'm going to read a hockey or sports romance in general, I want the sport to be featured in there because that's a big part of the characters' lives, and you get that in these books. Next up is Nalini Singh, who wrote the Psy Changeling series, and I have read so many Nalini Singh books. I've read all of the Psy Changeling books, all of the Guild Hunter books. I've read a lot of her contemporary books as well as some of her romantic suspense or her romantic thriller-ish titles that she's releasing now. But the Psy Changeling series remains my favorite, and Caressed by Ice and Heart of Obsidian are top of the list in there. Caressed by Ice just because it was the very first book in the series that I absolutely fell head over heels in love with. I loved Judd and I loved the relationship in this book, and I loved how it's set up pretty much everything else that comes after in the series. And Heart of Obsidian because Caleb Krychek is just a precious being who needs a hug, even though he is very scary and very powerful. This is also the best morality chain book that I have ever read, and so these sit top pride of place in my Nalini shelf recommendations. But I will pretty much read anything she writes because I trust her writing. I know exactly what I'm going to get when I pick up her books, and I know what I'm going to get from any of the various series or subgenres that I pick her up in as well, which is amazing. The next author is one that I couldn't pick a favorite in because it would be like picking a favorite child, quite literally. Like there is no one favorite in here because I get something different from everything that they write, and that is Ilona Andrews, which will come as absolutely zero surprise because I have been doing an Ilona Andrews read along with Heather and Megan and Izzy since last year. I just have the first books in the 3 series that I have read of theirs. I could literally pull every book off the shelf and I could tell you exactly why I love those books, but I figured I'd just talk about the series. For those of you who don't know, Ilona Andrews is a husband and wife writing duo. They write primarily urban fantasy paranormal romance stories. There are also some sci-fi elements thrown into some of the series, and they just world build like nobody else. They do found family like nobody else, and their cast of characters are just characters that you want to get to know every single person, not just the main character or characters in the series. They also do slow burn romance really well because sometimes it takes a little while for the main characters to form their attachment, but once they do, they're solid. And any book series that can have one main couple that we're following for multiple books is a series that I can get behind. There is the Kate Daniels series, which starts with Magic Bites. This is set in sort of like an alternate Atlanta in a world where magic rises and falls in waves, and this wreaks havoc on technology, and so the world has become reliant on people who are able to use magic. You have gods and magical creatures and all sorts of happenings going on. Kate Daniels is a mercenary turned private investigator who is hired to sort out various magical happenings in the town, and she falls for the Beast Lord Curran, who is the head of the pack of shapeshifters in Atlanta. The whole thing is amazing. Every side character that we meet in this series, I would 100% read a spin-off book for, or series. I would read a series of for all of them too. Then you have the Hidden Legacy series, which hits the paranormal romance a lot faster than some of the other series. The first 3 books follow Nevada Baylor and Mad Rogan, who are incredibly powerful magic users who come from families with magical power. So in this world, a serum was developed that unlocked the magical potential in people, and some families amassed incredible amounts of power and became sort of like the ruling factions or the ruling houses of the world. And House Rogan is one of the most powerful houses, and Nevada comes from a family who are basically doing their best to be unobtrusive. Her family runs a private investigative agency, and they're all trying to hide exactly how much power that they have. It's just great. The second 3 books follow Catalina and Alessandro, and then we're hopefully at some point going to get the story for the third sister as well, and I love these books. If you want really fast-paced action urban fantasy paranormal romance stories with a really cool concept, this is definitely up there. And then our current read through is the Innkeeper Chronicle series that begins with Clean Sweep. This is very much more an urban fantasy slow burn romance. It takes 3 books for the romance to really become an actual romance. I love every second of it. This is very smart because it blends urban fantasy and science fiction, because Dina is an innkeeper. She basically runs a bed and breakfast that is a way station for aliens who pass through Earth, using it as a stopover point. And within the inn's ground, she is incredibly powerful and basically has no limits to her magic. Her inn is alive and responds to her, and she plays host to space vampires and space werewolves. She hosts a dangerous arbitration at one point, and the whole thing is just so clever and so unique that I could read and reread this series over and over again, because as I said, it's so different to anything else that I have read in this sort of genre. And I love the sci-fi elements and the different worlds that we get to meet through this series as well. It's just very cool. Another author who I've read quite a few books from, but I still need to sort of go well into her backlist, is Talia Hibbert, who writes fantastic contemporary romance stories. I've read all of the Brown Sister series and all of the Ravenswood series, and then bits and pieces here and there. She's also just come out with a young adult title, which I'm not 100% sure if I am going to read, but it's sort of outside my adult romance category, so totally fine. But my favorite book, aside from probably Act Your Age, Eve Brown, which I do really, really love, is That Kind of Guy by Talia Hibbert, which is an age gap romance with an older woman and a demisexual hero. And I loved the representation in here. I loved the complexity of their relationship and how it's not smooth sailing, it's not easy, but they make it work. And the whole thing just brought me a whole lot of joy. Like, I really enjoyed all of the Ravenswood series. It features an incredibly diverse range of characters, as does the Brown Sisters series. And I desperately need to get back into reading more of Talia Hibbert's backlist, because I truly adore her writing style. Another author that I fell in love with last year is Chloe Leese, who also writes diverse characters in her books, specifically neurodiverse characters or people who are living with chronic illnesses, and I deeply appreciate that representation. She's probably most well known for her Bergman Brothers series, which is a contemporary romance series that follows a family of siblings and their relationships. My two favorite books in that series are books 4 and 5, With You Forever and Everything for You. With You Forever is a marriage of convenience between Rooney and Axel. Axel is autistic and Rooney has a chronic illness. I've read this a couple of times now and it is just an all-time favorite. Everything for You is an romance between Oliver and Gavin. Gavin is very much like a Roy Kent character from Ted Lasso. It is a rivals to lovers romance. Gavin and Oliver both play on the same soccer team. Football team, soccer, I call it soccer. It was just delightful. I actually need to come back and reread this because I haven't read it since it first came out, but I remember getting to the end of it and just feeling so satisfied with this story. And then outside of that, one of my all-time favorite Christmas books is The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese. It is fairly short, but it features a neurodiverse heroine. The hero has diabetes, they're rivals working in a small bookstore, and they need to boost sales over the Christmas period, or one of them is going to lose their job. But it is just so sweet and swoony and just adorable. I have no words for this book because it's one of my favorite Christmas reads. And then finally, probably my newest auto-buy author is Kate Canterbury. And I read one Kate Canterbury book earlier last year when I read The Worst Guy, which was a doctor romance. I kept meaning to come back to her because I really liked the writing in that, but I never did come back and pick up another book until Kirsty had talked about In a Jam, and I got very intrigued by it. And so I picked it up and I fell absolutely in love with it. So at this point, I've really only read 3 Kate Canterbury books, but I know that I want to read more because I just love her writing style. I love the way that she writes characters. So far, In a Jam is my favorite because it is a grumpy sunshine story with a hero who is raising his niece and runs a farm, and a heroine who is trying to escape being left at the altar by her ex and just wants to start fresh. And they end up in a marriage of convenience because she's inheriting part of her grandmother's property, but in order to do that, she needs to be married. And Shay and Noah knew each other when they were growing up, but what Shay didn't realize was that Noah has been in love with her for ages, and the whole thing is just glorious. Like, you get to the end and all you want to do is pick the book up and start from the start again. It is that good. So yes, I will be reading far more Kate Canterbury in the near future. All right, so those are some of my auto-buy authors. In the comments, I'd love to know who is an auto-buy author for you. Feel free to share all of your recommendations down below. If you just want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave any kind of heart emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.